Well, thanks everybody. We wanted to give an extra 5 minutes or so to the folks who were trying to get signed on or coming in a couple minutes late so they didn't miss anything. But I just want to give a very warm welcome to everyone who's here tonight. And thanks for joining us because we know everybody's weekends are pretty busy. So what's going on tonight is last year when Susan Murphy announced that the LAD DNA test would soon be available, you know, we all got pretty excited about that because seemed like it was never going to happen, and it finally did. But then shortly after that, our team felt compelled to start gathering some information on breeding away from lethal acrodermatitis and genetic diseases. And so what really happened is the result is tonight's webinar. Our presentation is intentionally a practical one. It's for miniature bull terrier and bull terrier breeders, and it's given by miniature bull terrier and bull terrier breeders. We're not scientists, we're breeders. We have a lot of skill and knowledge, but we went out and found what we needed to hopefully give you guys who came on with us tonight some information going forward too. The good news for LAD is that there's an absolute plethora of information available on using DNA testing to breed away from genetic diseases. And I found it's an amazing subject. And when you open that door on the internet, you find brilliant people who are just so generous and willing to share their knowledge. And really, in my opinion, as bull terrier breeders, we've really got it easy compared to what some other breeds are dealing with genetic diseases and DNA testing. So I feel very good about where we're headed. We have several presenters tonight, and each one has a different topic. You will see, though, that there are some common threads came through in each presentation, because even though we all came at it from a different angle, we all ended up saying basically the same thing. So I think now, well, I guess I just can't say enough about the passion and energy that our team and presenters brought to you tonight, and I hope that you're going to find this meeting very worthwhile. So now I'd like to introduce, oh, that's me, introduce our team and the presenters. If anyone doesn't know Ty and I, we've got a small breeding program in Western New York State. We're Sandstone Bull Terriers. And I'm hopeful that sharing this good information about bull terriers and bull terrier and DNA tonight amongst all of you is going to make us all our bullies stronger and make us better stewards of our breed. Just a little snippet that I put in there about myself is that I really came from the horse world. And I apprenticed in natural horsemanship training methods for many years. And when I met my first bull terriers, which were Ty's bull terriers, I found my horsemanship skills fit very nicely with these guys. They're strong-willed, they're powerful, and yet they're very lovable like my horses. So that's me. And Norma's gonna click. Oh, there she is. This is our singleton puppy. Sarah Smith-Bazuski is one of our web team members. She's been helping us with this for a while. Sarah's a BTCA member. She lives in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And Sarah is a singleton puppy. She was born in 1976. It was a wonderful year for her parents because they welcomed their daughter, and they also won their first Silverwood with champion Magor the Marquis. Having truly spent her entire life with bull terriers, Sarah judged her first sweepstakes this year in Dallas, Texas. She did a great job too, I saw it. Sarah lives with her wonderful husband Joe and her lovely bull terriers Birdie, Cher, and Lola. Diane Davis is Envoy Bull Terriers. And Diane acquired her first bull terrier in 1998, and her first litter was whelped in 2001. In that litter, there were 8 puppies, and 3 were LAD. That is when Diane became passionate about LAD research and for treatment of LAD puppies. Her second LAD pups were born in 2012, and both are doing well using new treatments developed in recent years. Diane has been a BTCA member for about 15 years and says that bull terriers and the friends I've met through them are the best. Laura Pethke is Kenron Miniature Bull Terriers. Laura is from Southeast Wisconsin, and she's been involved with minis for more than 18 years. She knows the dark world of primary lens luxation before the genetic test became available. Having a special interest in miniature bull terrier health, she currently serves on the Miniature Bull Terrier Club of America Health Committee, and Laura has been a certified veterinary technician for over 22 years. She's a strong advocate for lad puppies and is currently raising her third zinc puppy. Laura bred her first zinc puppy and rescued her other two. Glenna Wright, Glen Tom Bull Terriers. Glenna and her husband Tom are longtime members of the Bull Terrier Club of America, and Glenna has been serving as the chair of the BTCA Welfare and Trust Committee for the past 12 years. She and Tom, a veterinarian, have provided life-changing care for countless rescued bull terriers. Glenna is the recipient of the Bull Terrier Club of America's Bar Sinister Award for her longtime commitment to bull terriers and their well-being. And Dana Bowers, also a web team member who's been with us from the beginning. Dana is a member of the Bull Terrier Club of the Niagara Frontier and the BTCA. Dana and his wife have two bull terriers, Potter, a rescue, and Junie, his wife Melissa's performance bull terrier. Dana and Melissa also have two working Dobermans, Gila and Emmett. Dana is an IT phenom, and he has just been fabulous through all these difficult moments that we've having to present him from time to time. He's made these webinars possible from behind the scenes. And Dana is now going to just give you a couple of housekeeping. I wrote housekeeping issues, but I think we're going to call them kennel chores. A couple things we have to keep an eye on here. And Dana, if you could help us with that, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you all for joining us. I'm glad you can make it here today. We have everybody's mics muted except for our presenters, and we'd ask that you kind of keep it that way. It keeps it out of the recording. It keeps the presentation clean. I'll do my best to keep things muted if we've got something else going on. But if you have questions this time, if you were with us with our previous webinar, we've changed things up again. And we would ask that you would take those questions and post them to the Facebook group, the Bull Terrier, Mini Bull Terrier webinar Facebook group. And then tag the presenter that you're asking the question to, and then we'll work through getting those questions answered for you. It may not be immediate, but we hope to get them answered in the next day or two as we kind of work through them, but hopefully that'll drive some nice conversations also. The chat feature is open also, so feel free to chat back and forth between each other. We'll do our best to kind of keep an eye on it, but we won't be watching it all the time. So with that, I think we're good to go, and I'm going to turn it over to Diane.
Diane.
Okay. What about our topics of discussion? We're gonna go through those, or?
Sure.
Yeah, Melanie, do you want to go through the topics of discussion before we head on into presenters?
Sure, we will.
What we're going to be talking about tonight?
Okay, tonight we're going to go through, and this will be Diane's piece, what are the genetics of LAD? And how miniature bull terrier breeders are working with DNA testing to breed away from PLL. That'll be Laura's piece. Understanding how to breed away from LAD using both clear and carriers and why this is crucial. That's my piece. The actual DNA testing process, how to do it yourself or where to find a clinic. That's our Glenna. And how to manage and care for a lad puppy will be Diane Davis again. Oh, there's a surprise celebrity guest. How could we forget that? So that's what's going to happen to you tonight.
I can't talk because I'm in that meeting.
And
Do you need Terry? Do you need Terry?
and so this is where we start with Laura. Are we starting with Laura?
I'm going to start with my intro.
There we go with Diane. Diane's going to share her screen. Just bear with us, guys, because as we toggle back and forth between screens, it just takes a second.
Okay, how's that? Is that up?
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to start with describing LAD if people aren't fully familiar with it. LAD stands for lethal, meaning deadly. Acro, referring to the extremities, the feet, or the usually the snout or the ears, and dermatitis, meaning a skin inflammation. So the inheritance of LAD is a monogenetic autosomal recessive disorder. Monogenic means there is a single abnormal gene that causes the disorder. So it's actually pretty simple. The autosome, those are your numbered chromosomes, not the sex chromosomes that are referred to as X and Y, but these are the numbered chromosomes. In dogs, we have 39 pairs of autosomes. Hello.
You're back.
Okay, I got muted. Okay, so where was it? Okay, dogs have 39 pairs of autosomal chromosomes and humans have 23, so dogs have more. And then recessive, referring to the types of genes. We have recessive and we have dominant. A recessive gene is always masked by the presence of a dominant gene. So your recessives can lurk in there behind those dominant genes, so you don't know where they are. You don't see them, they don't express themselves, but they are there, and that's what makes it tricky to learn where these recessive disorders are coming from. So genes are inherited in pairs called alleles. This is a little genetics introduction. Each puppy receives, for the gene, one allele from the sire and one from the dam. So when we refer to a dog that's clear, it means that in basic terms, we'll call them good and bad. Good being the dominant clear allele, and the bad one is the recessive LAD carrying allele. So when we talk about a clear, it means that they got a good one from dad and a good one from mom. They do not have LAD and they cannot produce LAD. Your carriers are the ones that got one good, one bad, or one dominant and one recessive alleles. A carrier cannot develop LAD, and that's an important point. They can't. That recessive is there, but again, it's masked by that dominant gene, and it prevents that recessive gene from expressing itself. They cannot develop it, but they can pass it on because that recessive is still there. And then our affected are the ones that received both of the alleles. They received the recessive or bad allele from one from their father and one from their mother, and those are the bull terriers that are affected with LAD. So when we look into breeding, if you were to breed a clear to a clear, you're going to get 100% clear puppies because that's all they have. Likewise, affected to affected, all the puppies would be affected. Obviously, with LAD, we don't breed affected dogs. In other disorders, such as the PLL with minis, before the test, we didn't know who was affected until they were older, and so that did occur in certain times. If you breed a clear to a carrier, they will produce both clears and carriers, but they will not produce any affected because that clear parent cannot pass on the affected allele. So they cannot produce affected puppies. So what this tells us is that it is safe to use carriers in our breeding program. And Laura and Melanie are going to address that a little bit more in their presentations next. So it's when we breed the carriers to the carriers that we get a little bit messy. When you breed these two together, each puppy has a 25% chance of being affected, a 50% chance of being a carrier, and a 25% chance of being completely clear. And that's the probability for each puppy to inherit those particular alleles from each parent. This 1 to 2 to 1 ratio is generalized over the whole population, like all the bull terriers, not just the ones we're testing or not just the ones you know. It won't necessarily occur within every litter. If you have 4 puppies, you don't automatically get 1 affected, 2 carriers, and 1 clear. Chances could happen that every puppy in your litter could unfortunately fall into that 25% chance and inherit both the bad ones. You could get an entire litter of affected. Likewise, you could get an entire litter of clear. But that ratio, again, is generalized over the entire bull terrier population. So you will generally see a mix within your litter, or if you're lucky, you don't get any at all. So each puppy ends up with approximately 75% chance of not being affected. And so that's pretty good. But is that remaining 25% a risk that you want to take in your breeding program? So I'll do the science geeky part for anyone that's interested in genetics. This is the gene variant, and it's located on chromosome number 14 that causes LAD. This is the name of it and how it is designated as to this very specific location on the gene where the mutation occurs. There's a mutation in the gene that codes for the muscalin-1 protein. So in this study, they used samples from non-bull terrier breeds, normal unaffected bull terriers, and then the samples that were donated by people that had LAD affected bull terriers. Every LAD affected bull terrier had a mutation at this location. The normal muscalin-1 protein is made up of a chain of 735 amino acids. That's what proteins are made of. The mutated muscalin-1 protein has the first 104 amino acids. Then there's 9 of them that are present but incorrect. They're in the wrong order. And then after that, there's nothing. The remaining 603 amino acids that are supposed to be there to make up that muscalin-1 protein are completely missing. Consequently, there is no functional muscalin-1 protein in LAD-affected bull terriers. So if you've known anything about them and called them zinkies and heard about zinkies, you're probably saying, wait a minute, what about zinc? So the LAD dermatitis resembles Acrodermatitis enterohepatica that occurs in humans and cattle, and these are known to be caused by a zinc deficiency. Because of the similar symptoms, it's always been thought that LAD is a similar zinc problem. But most human AE and that of cattle as well can be treated and even cured with zinc supplementation, either oral or IV, but LAD cannot, which has always been a really frustrating discrepancy in attempting to treat LAD. It's been tried. You can feed them all the zinc you want, and it's not going to change anything. LAD would appear to be a primary immunodeficiency disorder, in agreement with the observation of lower IgA, which is the immunoglobulin A antibody levels in the blood serum, and a higher susceptibility to microbial infection in LAD-affected dogs. And then this is the publication, and this link will be provided later on as well. The authors say, to our knowledge, no link between muscalin-1 and zinc or copper metabolism has been reported to date. While Acrodermatitis enterohepatica in humans and Acrodermatitis in cattle clinically resemble LAD in dogs, these diseases may be caused by completely different molecular mechanisms. The fact that findings on zinc levels in the few published studies on LAD-affected dogs were contradictory, and zinc supplementation did not lead to improvement of lesions, support this hypothesis. And this last bit is saying that the zinc levels in blood serum of affected bull terriers are not consistently outside of normal parameters. So our problem isn't zinc, it's muscalin. The function of muscalin-1 protein is only partially understood by researchers in both human and veterinary medicine. Researchers don't know why the lack of functional muscalin causes the symptoms of LAD. So they know what the problem is with this muscalin, and they know we can see what the symptoms are, but they don't know why that causes the symptoms that we have. That's a point for further research, hopefully. The good news from the paper, LAD-affected dogs may serve as models to further clarify the elusive physiological role of muscarinin-1 in vivo, in living beings, both human and canine. Our LAD research has the potential to benefit humans with zinc-resistant acrodermatitis and to aid in further research into the role of muscarinin-1 in both human and veterinary medicine. So that's a pretty big thing. And we want to thank the BTCA for contributing the funds to the LAD project for so many years, because for a long time it seemed like it really wasn't going anywhere. It had its ups and downs. And thanks to Susan Murphy and the Health Committee for keeping the communication between the BTCA and Dr. Castle here in the United States in the early stages of the research. And then to the many foreign research teams that contributed. This truly was an international effort. So that is the end of my part on LAD.
Thanks very much,
Okay.
Diane. That was great. So let's see, we have Diane unshared. So Norma, can you, there we go.
All right, so what can we do with this DNA and what minis have done with it to try and get rid of PLL in our breed? PLL is primary lens luxation, and it's a well-recognized, painful, and blinding inherited eye condition that affects many breeds of dogs. Zonular fibers are responsible for holding the lens in place. In affected dogs, these fibers are much weaker and can allow the lens to fall out of place or luxate. Unfortunately, in minis, this occurs around ages 3 to 6, and it's after the animal has already been bred, which means it's usually already passed on. Other breeds affected by this, it affects many breeds, mostly terrier and terrier type breeds. The most common breeds are the miniature bull terrier, Jack Russells, and Sealyham terriers seem to be the most heavily affected. PLL in the miniature bull terriers has been around as far back as breeders can remember. Some say that bull terriers have also had it. And then there was some speculation that Jack Russells brought PLL to minis when they were introduced to reduce size. There's many different organizations that report the PLL data, either OFA, which is where most of us send it for testing, the AHT or Animal Health Trust, and then VetGen is another company that reports it. At this time, OFA estimates 48% of all minis are carriers, and only 7.4% are reported as affected. Sharing this information with other breeders. Some people share it publicly on Facebook and their own personal websites. Others are more private about it, but do share info with buyers and other breeders. It is important to share all the information, and breeders recognize that it's crucial and embraced by all. Some of the important lessons we've learned from using the PLL DNA test are that using clear to clear can be a recipe for losing breed type. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater is a common phrase, meaning don't just breed clear to clear. The carriers are important. It's important to choose a breeding based on the whole animal, not just the PLL status. Don't be afraid to use carriers. The introduction of interbred animals or bull terriers bred to miniature bull terriers and then being registered as minis was a goal to help breed away from PLL, but it seemed that that's what introduced the LAD into the miniature bull terrier.
Sorry, guys. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, guys, that took a second there. Okay. Okay, this is my piece of it. How did we get here? In searching this through, I found a woman online, Carol Bouquet. She's a PhD in genetics, and she has a website, the Institute of Canine Biology. I think to me, this is a very important website, and to mention to everyone, you will find that we're going to share all these links in the Facebook file for the Miniature Bull Terrier and the Bull Terrier webinar Facebook page, because there's a lot of stuff to be learned, and this woman's work is very impressive. So Carol Bouquet, she's a PhD from the Institute of Canine Biology. She has an article, and it's very simple, one page. It's got a number of points on it, but she explains why you need population genetics, and it's called the elevator pitch. She has point number 10, and I thought that this would be important to share because in common language, she tells us what happened. If you create a bunch of puppies from your favorite sire, you're making dozens of copies of all the bad mutations, and I want to say the good mutations too, in that dog, and you're dispersing them out into the population. But those bad mutations were never a problem before because they were always recessive, so they didn't appear. So now a previously rare mutation will become common, its frequency in the population increases, and the chances go up that a puppy will be produced that is homozygous. That puppy has 2 copies of that bad allele, and now it's homozygous recessive alleles. They're no longer silent. So genetic disorders that are caused by recessive alleles don't suddenly appear in a breed. The defective gene was probably there all along. What's happened is we make a zillion copies, and then suddenly you have a disease. So then we get into how do we fix this? And again, Carol Bouquet. This is a chapter title taken from her online course. And the online course is Managing Genetics for the Future. But the title is Fixing Existing Genetic Problems and Preventing New Ones. Why most of the things breeders do about genetic problems make them worse. And I thought, oh my God, red flag. We're not supposed to do this alone. We're supposed to get some information to go forward. This isn't up to us to have to worry about. Someone already is helping us with this. So the basics is that the lethal acrodermatitis mutation is recessive. This means that a dog must inherit 2 copies of the mutation. And to be clinically affected by LAD, the puppy inherits 1 copy from each parent. I know that most of us, we all know this, but I think it was important to take it step by step. Individuals with 1 copy of the defective gene and 1 copy of the normal gene are called carriers. Carriers show no sign of disease, but can pass the defective gene on to their offspring. It's only possible to identify a carrier with DNA testing. Here we go, reading forward. So now we have a very accurate DNA test for the presence of a mutated gene, which is strongly associated with the lethal acrodermatitis. And I think there's big applause that, you know, I think it was Diane mentioned, a lot of great minds worked on this, and finally now we have a solution we can work towards. So using the DNA test, we can determine whether a dog is clear, carrying no copies of the defective gene. 2 is a carrier carrying 1 copy of the gene, and 3 is affected, carrying 2 copies of the gene. Now, it's all about choices for us as breeders, and this is not a negative or a positive. It's all about us choosing what's right for our breed. And there are 6 different situations a breeder can encounter when she or he decides to mate a dog and a bitch and is concerned with selecting against a single recessive gene trait. Excuse me. So, of course, we've said this over and over, and I said there would be some repetition in the presentation. Breeding clear to clear, this breeding will produce only puppies who are clear and not carriers. Breeding clear to a carrier, any puppy from this breeding will have a roughly equal chance of being either clear or a carrier. Carrier to carrier, any puppy from this breeding will have a 25% chance of being either clear or affected, and a roughly 50% chance of being a carrier. Other way to say it is 75% of them will not be affected. If you breed clear to affected, any puppy from this breeding will be a carrier, but it's unlikely to be affected. Now, we left this in because in LAD, of course, our puppies are already presenting with the disease and they would not be bred. But in the case of the minis, such as Laura talked about, they would breed to affected, and still they would only produce carriers. You get to a point where you have to consider that in different genetic diseases. With our disease, it's not going to happen. Carrier to affected, any puppy from this breeding will be equally likely to be either a carrier or affected, so that's a 50-50. And then, of course, affected to affected. All puppies from this breeding are likely to be affected. So the biggest problem that we face is loss of good traits in a small gene pool, and this is the crucial part. So all bully owners and breeders should understand that because the total population is so small, the breed is at risk for losing diversity in its gene pool. We don't know our numbers and our percents of clear, carrier, or affected, but that will come to us in time as we've tested enough animals to start giving us some accurate percents. And then what if some of our best dogs are carriers? If we only use clear dogs, precious and desirable traits could disappear within a few generations. Then the breed could become more susceptible to the emergence of other genetic diseases besides LAD if the gene pool becomes smaller. So using our test information. Testing our dogs for the presence of the gene involved in LAD allows us to continue to use our dogs in our breeding programs who have great traits, but may be carriers of the LAD gene. Testing is also crucial to provide us with the data which can show whether the prevalence of LAD is decreasing over time in our breed. I think that's very important too, because the more we test, the more numbers and the more data the folks who are keeping track of this have to rely on, and they can tell us what our impact is as we try to breed away. We should not remove good dogs with good inheritable traits from our breeding programs just because they carry the gene for LAD. Instead, using the DNA test, we must carefully manage our breeding program to minimize the risk of producing affected dogs, while maximizing the diversity of the gene pool and encouraging the flow of good traits through our breed. The purpose of the breeding protocol is twofold: to gradually reduce the percentage of bull terriers and miniature bull terriers who are carriers of LAD, and to gradually increase, or at minimum, preserve the diversity of the gene pool and breeding stock. So the takeaways, as I see them, we don't know at this time what percent of bull terriers and miniature bull terriers are carriers. We do know that only breeding clear to clear becomes dangerous by decreasing our gene pool. We need to use our carriers bred to clears. And removing carriers from our breeding program also removes healthy hearts, healthy kidneys, good temperaments, patellas, everything. We would take those away too, because we're trying to breed away from one other thing. And this is Sarah's favorite part. Not to mention, you lose your good looks, because eventually over time, one of the things that Laura pointed out was that some of the folks who have just gone clear to clear start to lose their breed type. I know most of everybody is familiar with Raymond Oppenheimer, and that he has his 20 breeding principles, which I just think are just so vital, and I refer back to them often. Breeding principle number 12 of his 20 principles. Don't forget that it's the whole dog that counts. If you forget one virtue while searching for another, you will pay for it. So how did he know? But he did. And in his brilliance, you know, he just recapped it perfectly for us. So now, what I would like to do is introduce our Glenna Wright. And Glenna, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so Glenna Wright, and she's going to talk about the testing processes that we actually have for LAD, and there's a few different things that we can do. And there you go, Glenna. Put your first one up there.
Sure. We have testing available at some of the specialties. We provide the swabs, so there's no cost to each owner. You would prefer to do 3 swabs per dog. We will provide the swabs to you, and the forms will be shipped to you. This does not take away from our regular rescue dogs. It's a totally separate account, so don't feel like you're taking away from rescue dogs to do that. The important thing is that your dog needs to have no food or water for about 2 hours prior to when you swab your dog, because you want to make sure you get enough cells and you don't want it diluted by water or food. You would then go on to the PenGen site and generate an account. And then each dog that you want tested, you would put on that site. And it's really quite simple. After you've done that, you make your own account, you put your dogs on the account. Once your sample is received, PenGen will send you an email telling you that they have your sample. Once they have it resulted, they will send you an email saying that it's resulted. They'll send you an invoice. Once you pay it, literally within several minutes, you will have your results to your email. The fee that you will pay to PenGen is $60 per dog. And I really think that that is a $60 well worth spent to find out where you are with your breeding program, so that we can try to not make this happen again. If you are not in attendance with a club that is putting on a clinic, you can send your request to me at the email glntom@aol.com, and I will mail you the swabs. And I will include a form for you to fill out, and it will have the address for you to mail your swabs to, and you can do that yourself. So we don't want anyone to not be included. So we want anybody that wants to be able to have their dogs tested to be tested, whether you're in attendance at a dog show or if you're not, because we want the best for everyone. For whatever reason, I can't hear anyone.
Okay,
Oh, there you are, Mel. I hear
okay.
you.
Why don't you take, can you see the frozen semen slide,
I
Glenna?
can, yes, I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, so they can also do the test on frozen semen. If you have a dog that is no longer with us, that you have semen on. They, however, said that that is not the normal protocol, but they can do it, but they cannot guarantee that you will get a result. Sometimes the semen is too dilute, and they're not able to extract a sufficient amount of DNA. So the thing you need to know, and you'll have to talk to your vet about this, is they will need a minimum of 250 microliters of semen for the test. If you have that, then they may be able to move forward with the test. It will need to be shipped overnight with an ice pack to the same address. And you'll want to contact Elisa at Pengen and make sure that she knows that it's coming, because for that request, I think it needs to be on ice, so they don't want it thawed. And if you have any questions, you can either contact Melanie or myself about that. So what you're seeing now, hopefully, is a screenshot of the Pengen paperwork for you to fill out. It's really easy. You just go on, you create an account, you fill out the information on your dogs, or dogs, plural, that you will want to be tested. And probably now, since we don't have a lot going through there, they will probably email you within a couple of weeks and tell you that they have their test done. We do have some clinics coming up that will be doing the testing for LAD. In June, we will have Golden State. We may have one in Pittsburgh. I'm going to find out that information. And if you're going to be in that area, you can email me and I can tell you for sure that's going to happen. We will also have the Texas Gulf Coast show in July. And tentatively the Buckeye Bull Terrier Club show, which is in northern Ohio, the first part of August. And I believe in September is the Niagara Frontier, which is in the Rochester, New York area. And of course, Silverwood Weekend. And I think Margaret Casals herself is going to be attending that event.
There you go. Thank you very much, Glenn. I appreciate it. That was all really good information.
Okay, great.
So what I will do is I will unshare my screen, and I apologize for the feedback you were getting from my microphone. Dana said that something had happened. I think it might have been hitting the zipper on my pullover. So sorry, guys. So I've unshared, and we're going to bring back Diane Davis now, because Diane is going to speak to us about actually living with lab puppies. So go ahead, Diane, see if you can share again.
Okay, am I on?
Yes.
Okay, so just another quick thought on testing. Why bother with testing? Because I have heard, and some of us were talking with each other at the Bloomington shows, that we know of some people within the breed that think that testing isn't really necessary. It's a waste of money. It's there's not that many, but it really is important. In 2001, my first litter was born, and 3 of my 8 had LAD. I was a brand new breeder, and I was so excited to have this litter of puppies, and then something was wrong. Didn't know a lot about it at the time. It was before the internet. So, but these puppies were special. They had names, personalities, all the bull terrier characteristics of their normal litter mates. But at that point, there was no treatment known to me. It was being developed at the time over in England by Juliet Shaw, but I didn't know, and the vets that I spoke with didn't know anything either. And basically, they really had no hope of a comfortable life. So we brought them into the clinic, and we had to euthanize them. So that really affected me as a new breeder. I almost quit. I didn't want to do it again. I didn't want to go through that again. So it's my hope that people will test all their dogs that they're going to breed from, because this is really easy. And most importantly, to not be afraid to share the results, because we have to work together to prevent more puppies from having this and from continuing to pass it on. The LAD test protects not only our next litter, but our future generations, and also the new people that come into the breed. We need to do this for them too. We want to continue to encourage new young people to come in and to stick with it, and to have a litter and move forward, and move the BTCA forward, and move the breed forward. So we need to protect them too. If we do this right, they won't suffer the heartbreak that so many of us already have. So once we have a puppy living with LAD, it is possible. Isn't it lethal? Untreated, yes, it is lethal. With the treatment protocol, it's not necessarily lethal. Unfortunately, most veterinary literature still says that LAD is untreatable, and all puppies will suffer and die at a very young age. This, again, is true with no treatment. There is no cure, but the treatment is available and it is effective. There is a vast range of effectiveness and symptoms. And even with treatment, some don't live long. Laura's little baby didn't live too long, but she was okay for a while. She was pretty heavily affected. Others can live and thrive with a pretty near normal lifespan. This dog right here, his name is Mags, and his owners were in our online Facebook group, and Mags was just a couple of weeks shy of 10 years old when he passed away. So that's a pretty long life for a dog that's not supposed to live past a few months. So I'll go through some of the identification and symptoms of LAD. Generally, they're pretty slow at birth. They have a difficult time nursing. They'll have an arched palate frequently. Some are severe, some are not so much. They have a hard time latching on. As they get larger, their larger litter mates knock them off easily. In my experience, the puppies that I've had with LAD have had to be supplemented. I use tube feeding. It's very easy to learn, and it helps them get through that first couple of weeks of difficulty. When their eyes open, they can often have a bluish haze to them. This is usually due to PPM, which is persistent pupillary membranes. Those are membranes that are in the eye that are usually present at birth, but by the time the eyes open, they have receded, but sometimes they don't. Other vision problems can be common. I don't know of any that have been blind, but I suppose that could possibly occur as well. Then they'll start getting the sores on the feet. As you can see on Flickr here, in his little back foot back here, there's just a little touch showing right between those two toes. That usually occurs first on the front feet, usually around 6 weeks of age or so. Eventually, as they become an adult, the pads will thicken. There's an overgrowth of the keratin. The pads can get large and make it a little bit more difficult to walk. They also have a normal growth of the toenails. Some of them have real problems with the nails breaking frequently, getting infections in them. They do grow very quickly, and trimming them can be a little bit of a nightmare. That's probably one of our biggest challenges of their physical care, is getting those toenails trimmed. They're small in size. Their growth is stunted. By around 8 weeks of age, they're about half the size of their siblings. It's very obvious when you see them together. On the colored puppies, that color fades away. A puppy that was originally tricolor or black brindle will fade to kind of a chocolatey liver color. That black just fades away to a brown. Obviously more difficult to tell on your whites, but if they have any little markings on their ears, those will also fade. Black fades to red, red fades to almost non-detectable. They have difficulty keeping their body temperature up, so you will have to buy them a really spiffy sweater like this, or provide a heating vent to sleep on, or a cozy cave. They don't wag their tails, most of them. This is kind of unique. Bull Terrier with LAD that's excited to see you will quiver his tail just a little bit, and that's a pretty good sign that he's really excited. They can have orthopedic deformities. People that know this boy Flicker, he had something occur with this joint, and this leg is curved and stunted. Those aren't as common, but the rear legs are very typically bowed from the hips to the knees and out, and their rear movement is affected, although they can get around pretty good. They will tend to have digestive disorders, including diarrhea, sometimes chronic, sometimes more manageable. Again, there's just a huge range of the intensity of the symptoms. So one might have severe diarrhea all the time that's very difficult to manage, and others might have it just occasionally. They are susceptible to pneumonia. That's probably our biggest fear as the owner of an LID dog, that they will develop pneumonia. They do have the very fragile immune system, and any hint of a respiratory illness coming on, we get them to the vet pretty quickly. They have a distinct look. You can tell. Flicker's eyes are just a little bit different here. His overall shape is different. If you've seen them before, you recognize them. An experienced breeder can usually identify LID pretty early on, and this is one of the many reasons why having a mentor in the breed is so important. If it's your first litter or your fifth litter, you can always learn from people that have gone before you, and reach out to those people, and you will learn a lot. So our treatment, we do have a treatment protocol. I mentioned earlier that Juliet Shaw in England kind of made this her project, I guess. She had some with LAD, and she decided to figure out what to do about it. And she really did help develop the treatment protocol that we all use now. The first and most important is the steroid treatment. It's usually pretty essential, unless it's really not affected very heavily. We did get a dog in rescue about a year ago, or a couple years ago out in California, that was about a year old, and wasn't very affected at all yet. His behavior was odd, and his skin was having some issues, but he didn't need it until he was about a year old. This is Flicker at about 9 to 10 weeks old. You can tell his skin is breaking out all over his feet, his abdominal area, his butt, his nose, ears. This right here is where his sweater would touch his arm, and he broke out there as well. So he was definitely a good candidate for using the steroid. We use brand name Medrol, which is methylprednisolone. It's not prednisone, there is a difference, and Medrol works far better than straight up prednisone. We use it in low doses. I started Flicker on a 4 milligram dose, and literally a week and a half later, this is what he looked like. It is essential, and it does a lot of good. We're always taught that ongoing steroid use is really bad and not good for them, and it's definitely not ideal, but we do try and keep it at the lowest dose possible, and it's just something that they need. Flicker's last checkup, my vet said he has some changes in his eyes that are probably due to the long-term steroid use, but it's just kind of one of the minor side effects of that he has, that again, he just has to be on it. I tried taking him off of the steroid for about 6 weeks, and it just wasn't getting better, so he had to go back on it. We also use an antibiotic, usually Cephalex. Some choose to keep them on at full time and it helps. Others, myself, I decided for Flicker that we would just use it as needed in case of respiratory infection or ear infections or anything else that happened to come along. For topical treatments, we do a diluted betadine soak, just betadine with water. That helps cut down on some of that yeast and fungal overgrowth. These are organisms that are normally present on your dogs and yourself, and those of us with normal immune systems can handle having those things on our skin, but with their compromised immune system, they just can't handle those things on their skin, and this is what happens. We also use an antifungal cream. A simple athlete's foot cream works. In my climate, it's very dry here. Flicker tends to get deep cracks in his feet like you get in your fingers when it's so dry, and they're very painful. I can tell when he has one because he starts trying to limp on that foot too, so we get him fixed up with some moisturizers. In very humid climates, they can have issues with too much moisture and too much fungal overgrowth, and they're trying to dry those out. Dietary treatment, again, I had mentioned that the diarrhea and abdominal disorders can be a problem. We usually provide Flicker with a probiotic. They're available over the counter. We use the ProViable brand from our vet office, but there's lots of other ones that you can use. That just helps keep them a little bit more regular. Diet changes as needed. There was an article going around on Facebook recently that had a lot of really bad information, including the fact that a bull terrier with LAD had to be on a liquid diet for the rest of his life. And I don't know anybody that has one on a liquid diet, so don't believe everything you read on Facebook. LAD is treated like any other chronic condition. We have kidney issues, we have heart issues, we have Addison's issues. These are things that unfortunately we have, but they can be treated. And LAD is, in a way, just like some of those, and we treat them as needed, and they really do pretty well. The temperament. You may have heard that they are vicious and aggressive. They are not. We tend to describe that more of a reactive response to sounds and other stimuli. They're not purposefully aggressive. However, if you're in the way, you might get bit. Things like coffee grinders and loud noises can really set off a bull terrier with LAD, and you kind of need to watch out. So again, they're not purposely aggressive. They're not trying to go after you. They're not trying to hurt you, but it just requires a bit of caution, especially if you have young children. My kids have survived life with Flicker. You can see down here Nadia and Flicker and the little bear are really having a little bully fit there. And they really do become a member of your family. They generally do need to be separated from the larger litter mates. They get pounced on a lot and they react fairly violently to those big dogs. But once you get them away from their litter mates, they can be good with other dogs. I know Laura has a lab that is wonderful with all her LAD puppies that have come and gone through her home over time. So it really depends on the dog. They play a little bit differently, but every once in a while, as you can see over here, Flicker had his grandma Raven that was so wonderful with him, and they played together just fine. They are bull terriers. There's the bull terrier aspect is not lost just because they have LAD. They play, they interact, they have the same sense of humor, and they even can get the zipper surgery. Flicker ate the seat in my van, and about a month later, he got real sick, and sure enough, there was a hunk of vinyl in his gut, so he had to have a zipper surgery, just like all the rest of the normal bull terriers. Each one is different. They're also similar to one another in characteristic quirks that only LAD bull terriers have. They're very endearing. They're a delight to share your life with. They aren't always easy, but they're very special. Some links that I will have, you'll be able to see them on here and then also on the webinar Facebook page. We have a Facebook group called Bull Terriers LAD Zinkers. Lots of us around the world. They're all over, from here to Europe, Australia, New Zealand, everywhere. It's a great group. You can join even if you don't have one and just see how we deal with them and what they're all up to. Some of the folks you can talk to, myself, Glenna, Laura, Nadine Robards, Juliet Shaw in the UK, Pauline Zulo in Australia are all good resources. And then the publication from the study that was done and published from Switzerland is this link here on this Public Library of Science blog, and that will be posted as well if you want to go through and read all the pages and pages of genetic stuff. It's really interesting. And that is the end.
Wow, Diane, thanks so much. That was great information. Super. Hey, everybody. I just wanted to, let's bring in our last presentation of the evening. We had, like we said, we have a celebrity surprise guest coming on tonight. But what I also wanted to mention is we also have another person on our team who gave our last webinar, Norma Smith, and she didn't want to slide and she didn't want to say anything about herself because she probably hasn't accomplished much in the Bull Terrier world over her lifetime. But she is a phenomenal person, a great resource, and she's really, really helped us all tweak this, make it better, and make us better. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing and listening to these two, what I'm calling the icons of our breeds, and really looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have next. So Norma Smith, thank you for all your help. And if you could share your screen.
All right, so I am live.
You are live.
Our mystery, all right, our mystery guest and celebrity tonight is Linda Lafine. Linda acquired her first Bull Terrier in 1976 and breeds under the Kingsmere prefix. She was gifted a miniature Bull Terrier in the mid-80s that became the very first Miniature Bull Terrier Club of America club champion. And that was 3 years prior to the breed's AKC recognition. She is one of only 2 fanciers to have won both the Silverwood Trophy and the MBTCA's Van Hildekruisen Trophy. Kingsmere Miniature Bull Terriers have won the MBTCA National Specialty on 5 different occasions, the Van Hildekruisen Trophy, and several Stud Dog and Brood Bitch Awards. Linda is currently the president of the MBTCA and has served as show chair on 4 different occasions for the Miniature Bull Terrier Club of America National Van Hildekruisen Weekend. She also has served for many years as president of the Golden State Bull Terrier Club. Linda, as many of you probably already know, is a world-renowned artist whose bronze works are coveted by collectors around the globe. The BTCA's Brood Bitch Trophy, Jim Boland Trophy, Bar Sinister, and Silverwood finalist medallions were all designed by Linda. Her work was also used during the BTCA Centennial Celebration on glasses, pins, and also for the Hildy Performance Plate. Amongst the multiple awards that she's won was Best Sculpture at the Dog Fanciers Art Show with the Westminster Kennel Club. Linda, we're delighted and honored that you have agreed to join us. I think most would agree that your talent and longtime success as a breeder has certainly earned you the title of expert in the Miniature Bull Terrier breed. We'd love for you to share your thoughts on the breed and breeding using the knowledge gained through health testing. And to facilitate that, we have a few questions for you. So if I've got Linda live, is she with us? Hi, Linda.
Hello.
Hi, Linda. Okay,
Can you hear me?
welcome. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
I guess the first thing that we'd like to ask you is, what are your thoughts on testing and how much progress has been made through breeders testing for health issues such as PLL?
Well, my thoughts on health testing are these dogs don't ask to be born. This is our responsibility to not create them by not testing. If we continue to do the testing that we're doing, eventually we won't have PLL, we won't have LAD, and numerous other things that we're starting to do research on to see if we can find DNA markers for those ailments.
Awesome. Do you think testing has slowed down the use of top brood bitches and top stud dogs that have proven to be carriers?
It'll cut in ever so slightly on a breeding program where if you have a dog at stud that is a carrier and he's fabulous, people will still use him. They'll just be able to select their clear bitches to be put to him and not have to go through the problem of the expense of a litter and unknowingly breed a carrier to a carrier and get affected puppies. It doesn't make
All right.
sense to import semen from, let's say, another country where it's more expensive than it even is here and have several puppies that are affected in the litter. So if you're given the information and you know this dog is a carrier, you're going to put your clears to him. You're not going to stop using him. He's got too much to give to the breed.
Right. Makes sense. Have you ever bred a carrier to a carrier? And if so, could you tell us about the results?
Well, I think I have. Several dogs in the, before we had the DNA marker for PLL, were producing affecteds, and we had no idea why. We didn't understand it at all. So obviously we were breeding carriers to carriers, or potentially we were breeding carriers to affecteds because they didn't show up until possibly 4 years of age. So they'd already had several litters by then. So yes,
Right.
we've probably done that. And then with the LAD, I think we've been doing carrier to carrier recently because a lot of puppies will die in utero. We have a lot of litters with absorbed puppies or just failing puppies that were erroneously named fading puppies. They weren't fading, they just weren't able to survive because they had probably LAD or some other genetic issue.
Totally makes sense. Would you consider using frozen semen from an untested dog and one that is no longer living and cannot be tested?
Yes, and what I would do, I wouldn't throw caution to the wind and breed a carrier to him. So I would use any bitch I had that was LAD and PLL clear.
Oh, that's good to know. And again, that speaks back to not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, you can't. You're just going to destroy the breed. You're going to have a lot of non-carriers, but the problem will be you're going to lose a lot of type because some of our very best dogs have been carriers.
And, around that subject, can you talk about some of the influential, important miniature bull terriers that were bred from carriers?
Well, we don't know the sire and dam status on Smudge. We don't know which of the parents was a carrier, but we do know he had to be a PLL carrier because he did produce some affecteds. We didn't have the test to say if they were carriers. We just knew that they had gone blind. So he became top terrier for a while, stud dog, and he was also top mini bull producing stud dog quite a few years. And so we would have to just assume that he was one. Another one would be the mother of the national specialty winner. Tinkerbell is a carrier. And so now that we had known that, we always bred her to clears. And she produced, top winning puppies.
That's awesome. Have you ever brought in any experts for seminars for the miniature bull terrier breeders as a club?
They've done several talks, but we need more. Right now, I think we need to get some experts in there to explain more to us. And just like with the researcher for the LAD, if she would speak at Silverwood, that could be really an incredible thing to explain to people the importance of this testing.
And do miniature bull terriers have a pedigree database that you know of?
I'm not sure. They've started one in England. Maybe Laura knows if they have one. They had one where if dogs had luxated, they could go on a list. But now a database as far as the percentage of our carriers, I'm not sure about that.
Well, it's certainly something I think we could explore in the future. And how important do you think teamwork is amongst bull terrier breeders or miniature bull terrier breeders and bull terrier breeders, in fact, in tackling health issues? Like, in other words, avoiding any backstabbing and witch hunts. What do you think the climate is like at the moment?
The minis were kind of afraid when the PLL research started. They were afraid to have their blood drawn from their dogs, be them, blind dogs or dogs that still had vision. They thought that this could go on. It didn't. It didn't go on at all. They gave their blood, we found the marker, and now we've really banded together. And if I plan on using any dog, I know that I can just ask and the paperwork will be sent to me and vice versa. If I want to use a stud dog, I am asked to send their reports, and the same thing with the dog I'm going to breed to. So it's a pretty open thing. I don't know what's going on as far as the LAD. I don't think that that's going to affect the bull terrier people as much as it did for us at the beginning. I think that everybody needs to embrace this because, like I said, these dogs are not asking to be born. We're creating them, and it's our duty as breeders to share our knowledge, publicize our knowledge, and they're going to find out that it really won't cut into their use of their dogs.
That's great advice. Would you care to share with us some of your thoughts and advice on breeding going forward with the newly acquired lab testing?
I think it's going to be fabulous because I've got several dogs right now, several bitches, some clears, some carriers, and I now have the information whether I'm going to put them to that dog over there who happens to be a carrier. And I've saved myself the heartbreak of having puppies that are affected. So I think that all of us are going to benefit from these tests a lot. We're doing an LP study now for, I can never pronounce it, laryngeal paralysis. And if we find a marker for that, all the better. So I can only urge everybody out there to test your dogs, be frank. We're creating dogs that are supposed to be healthy. They're supposed to live a long time. And so it's our duty to our people that we place these dogs with.
Well, I think we can all agree with you there, Linda. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone with us tonight?
Pardon me?
Yes,
spread the word on this and, educate people. If you're a breeder and you have kids that you mentor that are coming into this breed, explain to them how important this is. So share your knowledge with everybody out there. That's why I think this webinar tonight is fabulous. All these people have put on a great class for everyone.
Well, we really enjoyed your chat, Linda, and thank you so much for joining us. I'd personally like to thank Melanie and for all her work on actually launching the webinar issue, and I think you can look forward to many more exciting ones down the road. So thank you, Melanie, and I'm out. Back to you, Melanie.
Thank you, Norma. That was very sweet. You sound like my husband. He wants me to continue on with these, but boy, it was a lot of work, and I just can't thank you guys enough. Norma and Linda, thank you. That was fabulous. You have such generous spirits for sharing the information that you have. And so,
well,
Norma,
thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it was a pleasure having you. thank you to Norma, Diane, Sarah, Laura, Dana. Did I get everybody? You did a wonderful job and much appreciated. So now, folks, what we'll do is I'll sign off this webinar. And if anyone has any questions tonight or in the next day or so, as Dana said, go to the Bull Terrier, Miniature Bull Terrier webinar Facebook page and just start asking the questions there. And we'll get them answered one by one over in the next couple days. And we will also have in the file section the links to any of the information that we've mentioned while we've been going through this webinar. So thanks very much for spending your Sunday night with us. And you all did a super job. Appreciate it very much. So night-night.
Night-night.
Night.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.